Welcome to CityWise. I'm your host, Tiana Stevens. CityWise is produced by the City of Rochester to shine a spotlight on city living at its best. Well, just in time for Mother's Day, 13 storytellers are preparing to share their experiences with hundreds of people on the topic of motherhood. Listen to Your Mother Rochester brings stories to the stage for a unique experience that supports motherhood through artistic expression. We're joined by Corey Spike Carter, co-producer of the show, and Takia G. Graham, cast member for the 2016 show. Thanks, ladies, for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
And so this is the second year for Listen to Your Mother in Rochester. How did it get started?
Listen to Your Mother is a national program. It started back in 2010 by a woman named Ann Imig. She's a writer and a blogger. And her whole philosophy was she thought that Mother's Day deserved more than brunch. Mm-hmm. And so she wanted to create an event that really celebrated motherhood. They did one show in Madison back in 2010, and that has grown to 41 shows this year in 2016. We actually applied 3 years ago and didn't get accepted. Mm-hmm. And then we applied again, and we did last year. So last year was our first year in Rochester, and then we were welcomed back again this year.
Okay, and what happens at the show?
Well, the show is a live staged reading. That's the format. So you have 13 people plus an MC that stand up and tell their stories of motherhood. Mm-hmm. We really tried to create this patchwork of stories based on the folks that came and auditioned and the stories that were told. Mm-hmm. A number of diverse voices, from older kids to younger kids to grandmothers, backgrounds, ethnicities, and take readers on a high and low in terms of emotion. You're going to feel joy, you're going to feel sadness, you're going to feel a lot of emotions, all those emotions that we feel as mothers.
Mm-hmm. And Takia, we were talking about your audition earlier. What was that process like? And give us a little idea of what you're going to be performing.
Well, that day, actually, I was telling Corey and the crew that I was preparing for a gathering of girlfriends. So I was all over the place. I was making this spread, and I come, tumbling in the room, and I'm cracking all these jokes, so they're laughing, and then the lights come on, and it's time to perform. Well, to read my piece. Mm-hmm. And my piece is a little bit non-traditional, I guess, from what they used to see is I do a poem. But it's not a rhymey, like Dr. Seuss poem. It's really a sophisticated, if I may say so, piece of poetic work. Thank you. And so I walk into this space, and they're just so lovely, the four of them, and then I go do my piece, and I hear this sniffling, and I think, oh, maybe allergy season is here. But when I get finished, they're all crying, and I feel really good about my piece. I don't feel like they're crying because I did a terrible job. I know it's a very emotional piece, and it was just, for me, it was the first time I performed that piece outside of my circle of friends. And it's about my mother's story. It's about, my mother had me at 15, and she had a really hard life, and my grandmother raised me. And in telling this story, I had been walking around with it for my entire life. I'm 42 now, but I wrote it, I was about 39. And I remember the team asked me how long had it taken me. I said, I've been writing this my whole life. But I sat down, my husband said something to me, and I cried for 15 minutes. And I wrote this 5-minute poem. And it's sort of a conversation with my mother. It's an apology between us. It's me. I became a mother at 19, and understanding that, she definitely is her own person, completely separate of being my mother. Like, that was just a chance happening, but she's her own person, and I wanted to sort of apologize and tell her that I understood that giving me up to my grandmother was a beautiful thing. Like, she wasn't selfish, she was selfless, and it's sort of my appreciation for us.
I think Takia's story is a very important voice in our show, and she represents one voice and one way of telling a story. And that's one of the great things about this show, is that you're going to see 13 different people, 13 different styles. Takia's in particular, when she left the room, the four of us on the organization team, because there's 4 local women that brought it here, on my team, we did feel like we had gotten hit by a truck in a good way. It was so, her style is very lyrical, and so you're kind of memorized by her, and then she was grounding you with these really kind of realistic and almost harsh statements of the things that she had been through. And it just really, some things I could empathize with, and some things I could just, appreciate in her being her.
So Takia, sounds like you're a natural writer, performer. Are all of the cast members writers, or what are some of their backgrounds?
They're not all writers, but some are. We have some professional writers, we have some bloggers, and then we have just regular people who like to write or wanted to tell a story, or felt compelled to tell their story. And that's part of the diversity, and that's part of the great experience too, is sort of mixing these professional and non-professional people and hearing those styles. One of the great things last year that I can't wait for this year is we actually sold out our show last year.
Wow.
In the first year. And I got to stand in the very back of the room and hear all the stories and see all the people that came together. And so many times you saw people reaching over and kind of grabbing the hand of the person next to them, or you saw someone grabbing a tissue, or you saw a lot of people just nodding their head, because it was this chorus of Me Too's that they sort of, that they understood. And in that moment, that shared experience, there was a real connectedness that happened. And I thought that was really, really important, not only for the people in the room, but just for our city. We talk a lot about uniting our city, and I think this topic of motherhood is something pretty universal that we can all relate to.
Who do you hope comes out to the show?
Gosh, I would say everyone, but we only have capacity for 800, so I'm hoping 800 people come. I think that I want people to come that can share a special experience with the people that they come with that day. And I guess what I mean by that is I'm going to have my mom there, and that's my Mother's Day gift to her, is that we're going to share that experience together. Friends can come together. You can come with your grown children, probably 16 and over. Husbands and wives, partners, friends, I mentioned friends. It's a great vehicle for not only to talk about the stories that you hear kind of after the fact, but maybe you go grab dinner or a drink or coffee. And we heard from people last year that not only were they talking and reacting to the stories they heard, but they also started to share their own stories. And in that way, it created such a ripple in a really positive way. And we're really proud to have people like Takia and ourselves that were part of bringing that.
Sure. So any men in the cast this year?
We don't have men this year. We did have a gentleman that auditioned last year, but not this year. Hopefully next year we'll bring the show back and the men can represent again.
Okay. And now also, is the show videotaped? What happens after the show is over?
Yes. Yep. All of the stories will be recorded, and then they get posted on the Listen to Your Mother national YouTube channel. So for folks that want to see what we did last year, they could go to that listentoyourmothershow.com and click on the videos, and they can see last year's videos, and then this year's videos will also be up there.
Do you have any favorite stories that you want to share? And Corey, were you a performer last year?
No, I am more behind the scenes on this one. But last year, you mentioned gentlemen. We did have a gentleman in the cast last year who did. His piece was called Madre, and it was a tribute to his mom, where he ultimately sung in Spanish a little bit and talked about his mom being his guiding light. This year we have some really important stories to tell. We have a mother of a child with a disability. We have a mother of a transgender child that has gone through a lot to be in a really good place now. We have mothers of a 10-year-old daughter who I can relate to that right now. We also have people doing really, really moving tributes to their moms, Takia being one of them, coming to a greater understanding, appreciation, and just really kind of valuing the personalities of these people that were their mother, are their mothers.
Now, do ticket sales benefit some charitable organizations in Rochester?
They do. I know Takia actually has a connection to one of them. SPCC is one of the charities, and then also that stands for the Society for the Protection and Care of Children. And then also Parenting Village. So all of our sponsorship money and our ticket proceeds, once we've covered our costs, will go to those charities.
Takia, what do you hope that the takeaway from this is for the audience?
Well, I think for me, in my other life, I'm an English professor, so I privilege stories. I believe that people should be in charge of their own narratives, and I think that we have so many ways for people to tell stories, but unfortunately, people are left out of the storytelling narratives. And so for me, what I would hope is that people walk in there and, well, first of all, as a cast member, I want to be able to honor my mother. I want to be able to tell my story, and I want to be able to listen to my castmates tell their stories as well. But I think that we forget about motherhood, we forget about womanhood, we forget about personhood. And if we're talking about a more inclusive society, we need to make sure that all of the voices are being heard. So what I hope happens, I hope that people walk into this space with no expectations. And I hope that there's this thing that I talk about. Iyanla Van Zandt talks about surrender, and she says that when we surrender, we should do this as opposed to this. And so I would like people to walk in and surrender to this process, and so that they can hear, they can heal, they can listen, they can grow, they can affirm, they can love, they can laugh, they can cry, and ultimately they can walk out and they can do this, and they can get wine, or they can get a glass of milk even, or they can call their mothers, or go to the cemetery, or open themselves up to this human experience.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on today. Listen to Your Mother will hit the stage at 7:30 p.m. Saturday, May 7th at the Lyric Theater. That's at 440 East Avenue, and you can visit listentoyourmothershow.com/Rochester for ticket information. CityWise will be right back.
Batter up.
Mayor Lovely Warren and the Rochester Red Wings invite you to join us for Clean Sweep and Stay for the Game. Help beautify our city with thousands of your neighbors starting 8 a.m. Saturday, April 30th at Frontier Field. Volunteers receive free breakfast, a t-shirt, and a free ticket to the afternoon Red Wings game with lunch. Call 311 or visit cityofrochester.gov/cleansweep for more.
Rhythm has always been an important element in the music of Black Americans, and particularly in the music of jazz and the blues. Rhythm has been critical, and it is an African survival that has been preserved and transformed.
The rhythm of the drum, the rhythm of the spoken word, it's all about the vibrations, and allowing those vibrations to move you and become a part of you. And I think that's what is the connecting force between all people, but more so, specifically, people of African descent. I'm a self-taught djembe player, so I don't know the traditional rhythms, but just feeling the bottom, it just moves me. Being able to communicate and being able to share the rhythms with audiences, you know, it's the kind of thing where folks can't sit still.